that to me, as a partner leader, that's what you're supposed to be orchestrating. If you're only impacting your department and you're not driving 1/3 of sales team activity, well, you're never going to drive 1/3 revenue contribution. What we have to recognize is the evidence is undeniable for partnerships to make an impact on a business, whether that's from deals that close 2x at the rate of an outbound deal or an inbound deal, whether it's the speed to close, whether it's the retention metrics. And the point is that I think we have a seat at the table for the first time as a profession. It's very much like customer success didn't have a seat at the table until customer success did. Now there's a new industry of technology and tools that are supporting that. So how do you go orchestrate that technology to build this motion out across your business, right? Your customer success is not a department, it's a function. It's the same way that partnerships is not a department, it's a function. And it should be even more overlaid across the rest of the business. For me, what is Nearbound? Nearbound is about, we're deciding and making a commitment that we want X% of our revenue mix from outbound, Y% from inbound, Z amount from Nearbound. Let's say 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. Well, how do we drive 1/3 activity? How are 1/3 of sales team's activities Nearbound or partner activities? And that's, as a partner leader, that's what you're supposed to be orchestrating. If you're only impacting your department and you're not driving 1/3 of sales team activity, well, you're never going to drive 1/3 revenue contribution. This is SaaS math. It ain't magic. Partner acquisition can be something that is a wide net. Let's go try and sign everybody. And you end up with POPO, partners on paper only. And those partners on paper only don't do much for your program other than hit some vanity metric or something like that. So what you're trying to do is build some predictable process around what type of partners you're bringing on, ensure that you have some quality control, align with those partners in the partner managers. So for example, what I might do is I might go, okay, what's the criteria for having like your target partner? So like setting those OKRs is very important, but that's on a per partner manager basis or per book basis. Let's say partner managers have 30 partners. What are the 5 to 10 max, that they're really going to be driving the most of their revenue from? A lot of partner people like to kind of trash talk, so to speak. It's like, oh, 20% of partners produce 80% of results. I'm like, that's been around forever. It's called the Pareto principle. It just is. Like, don't fight is, like lean into is, right? You're not going to get 100% of your partners to produce. So with that in mind, you're avoiding POPO, you're setting clear OKRs. What do those target partners look like? And then how do you go about, getting those partners activated, taking that approach to getting them integrated into some Nearbound sales motion? I mean, this is a lesson that great sales leadership learns one way or another that I feel like partner leadership can learn as well, is that what do a lot of first-time managers do incorrectly? A lot of first-time managers, they tend to manage to their lowest common denominator, right? They focus on the worst performers on their team, and instead of increasing the output of the top performers. And the answer, you come to find out, is actually inverse to what your natural inclination is, which is to focus on the bottom. You should actually focus on the top, right? Like, as a leader, if your top isn't performing, guess what? I guarantee you your bottom isn't performing. So my point is, you want to onboard your first partners into your account mapping solution, your Nearbound revenue platform, and like open up the gates a little bit wider. Allow for more, like invest in making that partnership more optimized, more streamlined, in creating more partner attach. I've told stories about how when we started with Drift at 6 cents, we were doing a couple deals, like a week, a month. And then we got to a place where we just opened up a joint Slack channel, gave each other's names in data sharing, and boom, you're doing 6 or 7, deals a day. This is where you're going to start to see that data happen in real time. What do I mean by that? Is that you're seeing, customers versus customers, opportunities versus yours, that matrix or that layout or that spreadsheet, that grid, whatever it is. And the point is that you want to make sure that you both have a mutual understanding with each of those partners, and your partner managers do as well, on what's a good op for you, what's a good account for you, what's a good op for them, what's a good account for them. So what you're looking at is, like, for example, do all they care about is target accounts? AE might have 100 accounts in their name, but like all they really care about are these top 10, top 20. So if you're out there trying to, play assist or ball on those other 80 or 90, and they just really are never going to move the needle for that partner, they're just kind of air cover in case of a hot inbound lead, you're in a different spot. And I think what you have to do is just make sure as a leader that you have a good understanding from your partner managers. Do they have an understanding of their partner's ICP? How that matches up against ours? Outside of the overlap data, what's the strength of that kind of like economics and business relationship? Oh, they're selling a $500,000 deal. We're selling a $50,000 deal. It's actually pretty easy for them to work us in as a nice to have, or vice versa. Like, hey, this is more noise. Like, how is that actually happening? So I think you want to build sections into that kind of account mapping playbook where you're understanding more about their data. You're talking with your partner managers around it. And then what you're trying to do is you're trying to get to a place, like I said at the beginning, where you're starting with a small amount of data and overlap and really honing it and going much wider. So that 6-month plan is, how do we actually get to a place, for example, where we start to do territory overlap? What I mean by that is, like, you might map certain reps to reps, right? Like, that's a new way of thinking about it. It's like, oh, the Northeast territory has, DK and this person. Let's put them up together and boom, there's 30 accounts that they're going to go work and collaborate on. Maybe it's 10 net new. There's 10 where they're your customers and not mine, and then 10 vice versa, right? There could be some overlap like that. And that's where your partner managers are trying to advance them through that process. And then, of course, you got to make sure that you have that data or that shared success stories into that, joint value proposition or value narrative. I think help first mentality is almost even better than give first. I call out give first in the guide, but help first is the way that I would actually amend that today. It's very easy to roll out a solution like this and create some dependencies where it sets you up for a lot of disappointment. You're going into a partner relationship and you've just set up some sweet tech, you have a joint plan, and all of a sudden you see, like, oh, there's 50 accounts you can help me with. There's a lot of opportunity for you to snake oily your way into, like, actually break into those accounts and find a way in. You can do that, but that might be at the expense of that partnership's, overall health. So I think the way that I would think about it is both. It's like, how do you help first? Well, first, make people feel amazing about helping you. If your AEs are asking for, introductions, make sure that they understand there's more plays than that. There's more plays than just an introduction. How do we share some context on what we're already doing? How do I bring something to that conversation where, with a little bit of extra research, hey, here's this account, with Jane at Acme Co. Instead of just asking about X account from Jane at Acme Co., we might also see, hey, there's 3 other accounts that she has open opportunities on that we've closed as customers. Could we go get some intel from the CSMs to be like, hey, here's these 3 other accounts we see you have ops on that we might be able to help with. Here's a question about this one. Do you see that kind of like inversion there? I just offered for help on 3 accounts where she has open ops that are customers of ours, but my CTA was, can you answer these questions about your one account? What do you think she's going to do? She's going to respond, right? How is that not a fair trade? That's way more than a fair trade. So, like, that's what I mean by, like, a give first or help first mentality. It's like you're getting what you wanted, and then you're starting that relationship up on such a great foot. This is about building that feedback loop and really setting yourself up as a leader and a manager, of this motion. How do you ensure that your partner managers, your partner reps are getting better? When you're sharing the insights, you're building your playbook. So when you're joining the calls, there's this process. I think Kevin Linehan, I'll credit him for bringing this. I think some of it came from HubSpot, some other places, of tell, show, observe, coach. What you're doing is you're telling reps what they're doing and why. Make sure that there's some basic documentation. There's a playbook. Show. If you're not willing to do it yourself, you're probably a pretty bad leader in terms of spinning up a new motion. Let's be honest. There's not thousands of examples of this where, like, how to do an outbound cold sales call. With this motion, it is a little bit more new. Like, you need to show that you can do it. Like, have some conviction. Then observe, then turn that back around to them. And then, coach. So, the documentation comes on the tell side. This is what we're doing. This is the playbook. This will be followed. Do we have agreement? Yes, that's tell. Show is like, here, I'm going to do it. Now you do it. And then we're going to align on what makes you better. So from that perspective, I think you can then take that out to the other managers. And this is probably the most important part of this entire guide, or this entire process of rolling out a Nearbound platform. What I just talked about and what you need to do with your partner managers. Guess what you got to do? You got to go do that with your sales managers. Now, this is hard because they've never managed a Nearbound motion where 1/3 or 50% or 10%, whatever number of activities are these new partner activities you're trying to put into their sales process. You better approach that carefully. Decide which sales manager or team you're going to make your tiger team and knock it out of the park, right? Because guess what needs to happen at the next QBR? Somebody needs to stand up and go, holy cow, we're the team that kicked everybody else's butt. And that's because we leaned into Nearbound. We leaned into partner. We started running 25% of all of our accounts, 50% of our accounts. We started attaching partners to and running these plays. Jane's going to get up from AE, Quota Club, 101, whatever, and talk to you all right now about how she did it. Now, guess how you get the other teams to follow suit? That way. Not by you making some decree from sales leadership that all reps must follow this new process. Like, you got to go ground up. You got to clone that across managers, right? Get your sales managers to do your job for you. And then, of course, from there, that's where you start to build out the training and, the playbooks for sales and integrating into the process. You got to get it right with your partner managers, between you as a partner leader. You got to get it right between your first sales manager, sales team, and then you can get it right for rolling it out to the rest of the org too. That approach, I think, is very important. There's 4 things I call out. I mean, the reality is, like, who are our partners? So, for example, not only are not all partners equal, not all partners are like the same. They don't do the same things. There's consultants, there are service partners, there are technology partners, and there are alliances, right? Where the power dynamics of that relationship may widely swing one direction versus another. So how to engage with different partner types. So who our partners are, why do we sell with them, or how do we sell with them? And then what are those plays? I've been using the 3 I's: intel, intro, or influence, for example. Like, hey, yeah, you can get an intro to a new contact, but you better share some context about some other contacts, right? You can get intel on current business initiatives or buying process, or you can try to get a partner that maybe is a bigger platform provider. Maybe they have a much higher spend than you. They're a system of record more so than you are, and you're a plugin or a workflow. And they might have some authority from a tech stack perspective to be able to exert some influence over an economic buyer to say, yeah, this is a great technology to plug in alongside what you're already doing with us here. I would advocate for you to make this purchase, right? So those are like 3 plays. Do your AEs know what those plays are? Do they know how to run them? How many times have they run them before? They haven't? Well, we need to document them, right? And then, what's in it for them? What's in it for me? So it's like, hey, very clearly, like, hey, you do this right. This is what can happen to your deals. Here's how Jane did it last quarter. And then, what to expect. Let's say the goal out of the gate as you're rolling this out to the wider sales team is that we think we have the capacity for 20% of all accounts to have a partner attached. Hey, that's 1 out of 5, right? So, like, what to expect? Well, 1 out of every 5 accounts, you have 100 accounts. That means you're picking 20 that you're working with partners, or whatever that is. You can approach this a bunch of different directions, but you need to explain to the team, here are the expectations. We are going to attach partners to X or Y number of accounts with some or all of the people. I don't think that the world truly understands how disruptive a networked database is to the workflows that sit on top of that. The entirety of B2B's history was based on information, data flowing into a single CRM. The second that you start to triangulate that, and it's not just a triangulation, because you're not just talking about another company's, CRM, so to speak, you're talking about the permutations. It starts to get exponential in terms of the data that you could potentially surface and the workflows that are built on top of it and how you measure. So for example, when we're talking about how do you track activity? Well, from a sales perspective, it's pretty easy. I have an account executive at my company. She's reaching out to an account and these 5 contacts at another company. Great. Salesforce is all set up for that. Well, what about the conversation that your account executive has with a partner and the CSM at your partner about an account? Well, all of a sudden, how do you track that? Salesforce or HubSpot is not set up for that out of the box. And a nearbound revenue platform, is going to give you the opportunity to orchestrate some things on top of that. That data layer, that network data, you're gonna have to orchestrate things on top of that. So for example, do you want to track, all of your partner activities? Well, the answer is like probably to some degree, and maybe it has to be manual to start. So you're logging a task or a list, you're clicking a get intro button in a reveal, or you're engaging in wherever you are. And that creates, an activity. Okay, so that activity is Jane is now reaching out to partner, to account executive X at, partner Y. Fantastic. What happened on that call, right? Do you roll that up into the account that they talked about? Do you roll it up into the partner record? You have to make some decisions here. And then was there an agreement to engage, or was that the only call? For example, they had a call and it was just an intel gathering call. Hey, I got all of these notes and I got what I need to go win this account now. Stamped as partner influence. How does Jane know to close that activity and mark it as, I got intel out of that call? Perfect. Or leave it open. It's like, hey, we're going to work together on this and like another account or something. Like you start to realize that you have to build maybe certain activity types or use a custom object or put it into an opportunity, layout or something like that inside of Salesforce. So that's where you need to define these call types. You need to be able to track some semblance of activity to understand, what's happening in the field. Because here's the other thing that's so important. You're not just tracking the activity for the tracking the activity's sake. Is it working? What you're going to find out, for example, is that you might have these activities at the top of the funnel where reps are connecting, but they're not really translating into influence downstream. Why do you want to know that? Why do you want to know that that call disposition was like nothing? Like the activity happened, but like nothing came out of it. Well, what the heck's happening in those calls? Maybe they're crap calls. Maybe your AEs are getting together and they're talking about Sunday sports for 25 minutes and they're like, oh yeah, I don't really know anything about that account, man. Sorry, I slung them a hot deal at the end of the quarter, pushed them through the process, and man, I don't really know anything about them, and they're broing out doing something stupid. It's like, well, of course that's not going to translate into anything. You guys are having stupid idiot calls in the field. So to be able to go back to it, inspect. So that's where the activity and then the quote unquote attribution, which I hate that word, I use it because that's how ops teams think, become very important. Is you can go back and say, look, here's why that op is a partner, there's partner attach, is there was an activity that happened with Jane and X, and she marked it as she got all the intel that she needed, and they were going to go influence that same account on their next QBR that they had. So that's what the take action chapter is about, is like you're building a mature engine to drive your nearbound sales. So this is about understanding, the nearbound sales math. At the end of the day, how much activity is actually happening in the field? So what does that mean? How many partner meetings are held? So how frequently is your partners meeting with your partner managers, vice versa, right? So like those partner meetings are important, but then where are those joint meetings held? So what's that mean? Like partners and sellers. So like the ones where we're actually pursuing some accounts. Well, what is that universe of partner accounts that are kind of in flight, where we've like reviewed, had some partner account reviews, like that's a type versus like a partner opportunity review. I call those things out in other places in the guide to kind of help people understand that this partner account review is about talking about triangulating, some sort of pipeline play. Whereas, a partner opportunity review is about trying to potentially accelerate some, pipeline play, right? So creation versus, acceleration. And then you need to be able to look at the output through those things, right? So what pipeline was actually created, for example, how many integrations were installed, or, how many things that came out of this. So part of that coaching process is being able to look at that math and make improvements, so that way your partner managers know what it's like to have a fully active book. Your sales leadership knows that your partner managers are productive because of those leading indicators and those lagging indicators. Because I can tell you this right now, pipeline and revenue, it's actually a lagging indicator. It's not a leading indicator. So why is this so important? You can't manage everything to the indicators that are last. You're always going to be chasing the numbers. So the leading indicators are going to be things like how many meetings are happening with my partners, how many meetings are happening with my partners and my sellers. Does that match the desired revenue output? If not, the volume's wrong. If it does match, but the production's off, then the quality's wrong. It's really that simple. The only reason that I've ever been able to make a dent in any type of partnership relationship is because I was forced to own the totality of a number as a sales leader. I can never undercut how valuable that experience for me was to be a VP of sales and to own the revenue number and have to show up to a board meeting and say, we were really behind for 3 quarters, and look, we turned it around, and here's how. And it's like, holy cow, being on the other side of that, how hellacious it is to go through that experience and be like, no, I actually am accountable for the revenue number all of a sudden. And there's big, smart people with big checks and big money, and holy cow, they expect me to know what I'm doing. Well, guess what? That's a position you're in now as a partnership leader. Like, you have to be accountable for your ability to impact the business. And that's just the reality. It's grown-up games now. Like we're at a different stage where it was like a strategic fun bet in the past and you could kind of float through this department. In this economic environment, it's now a growth lever. You are now essential to the business, which means you need to act essential to the business. So what does that all mean to me? It means that sales leaders understand that you're not going to get where you need to go by always chasing the forecast number. They understand that it needs to happen through things like coaching, through frameworks, through process, through sales math. If you've ever had an annoying VP of sales that was like blowing people up on activity volume, guess what? It's because what I just said. It's because the quantity was not there in order to meet the number. And if that is it, then we have to up the quantity. Now you might argue, oh, we need more quality. Okay, great. Well, then let's adjust that too. But you can't sit back and go, the numbers aren't there, absent a plan and a recommendation based on what's been happening on how to get there.